Breaking tonight, fight night in Vegas as the top Republican presidential contenders make their case for keeping America safe, just weeks before voters start heading to the polls. Welcome to a live midnight edition of the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Tonight marks the final GOP debate of 2015. Soon Americans will gather with their families for the Christmas holiday, and two topics are likely to come up around that dinner table: the threat of terrorism and who is best prepared to keep us safe. Tonight, that second issue was front and center as the candidates clash on everything from surveillance to Syria, ISIS, and immigration, giving viewers the most clear-cut indication yet of where they stand. Here are a few highlights.
There have always been people in American politics that wanted America to be more like the rest of the world. And in 2008, one of them was elected president of this country. And the result has been a disaster.
When I see they have a climate conference over in Paris, they should have been talking about destroying ISIS because they are involved in virtually every country.
It's not a war on a faith. It's a war on a political and theocratic ideology that seeks to murder us.
The DHS says, no, we can't check their social media. For heaven's sakes, every parent in America is checking social media, but our government can't do it.
Who would be? I just can't imagine somebody booing. These are people that want to kill us, folks. And you're objecting to us infiltrating their conversations? I don't think so.
Donald, you're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen. And I do have the strength.
The Middle East has been in turmoil for thousands of years. For us to think that we're going to go in there and fix that with a couple of little bombs and a few little declarations is relatively foolish.
As Commander-in-Chief, I will do whatever it takes to defend America. But in defending America, we cannot lose what America stands for.
And yes, we would shoot down the planes of Russian pilots if, in fact, they were stupid enough to think that this president was the same feckless weakling that the president we have in the Oval Office is right now.
What a night. But perhaps the biggest headline, the heated exchanges between Jeb Bush and Donald Trump and Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. We'll have much more of that in a moment. We have a jam-packed show for you tonight. Frank Luntz and his focus group are here. Plus, Chris Direwalt, Howard Kurtz, as well as Mark Thiessen and Bill Burton and Dana Perino. But we begin tonight with Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume. Brit, great to see you. So who do you think won, if anybody?
Well, I wouldn't say that anybody won, but I think, you know, the question really in these debates when you got so many people on the stage is who helped themselves and who did not. And I agree with you entirely that there were basically two debates going on that really leaped out at, I think, at any viewer. One of them was Cruz versus Rubio, and the other one was Bush versus Trump. And with regard to the Bush versus Trump exchange, I think Bush might have done himself some good if he'd come out in this style some time back, but I think it's a little late for that now. And Trump did all the things Trump usually does. He scoffed, he sneered, they used the split screen so you could see him reacting to what Bush has said. His supporters love that. And I think that although, you know, Bush made a few points and got a big cheer when he said, you know, you're not going to insult your way to the presidency, I suspect Trump came through that just fine.
And so, but did Jeb Bush do himself any good with anybody?
Well,
if he didn't damage Trump, did he do himself any good?
I just think that I'd be surprised if he did. I think it's that ship has kind of sailed on him. The world has kind of passed him by this time. I think, you know, he may be a fine man. I think he is a fine man. But I think the voters and the polling and the whole race has suggested so far that this is not going to be his year, and that his year may have come and gone, if there ever was going to be one. Let's
talk about Rubio versus Cruz, because that was the big dynamic tonight, apart from Trump and Jeb. And this particular exchange on immigration that got a lot of people fired up. Watch.
I am personally open, after all of that has happened, and after 10 years in that probationary status where all they have is a work permit, I personally am open to allowing people to apply for a green card. That may not be a majority position in my party.
Well, he has attempted to muddy the waters, but I think anyone that watched the battle that we had, one of the most troubling aspects of the Rubio-Schumer Gang of Eight bill was that it gave President Obama blanket authority to admit refugees, including Syrian refugees, without mandating any background checks whatsoever. Now, we've seen what happened in San Bernardino. When you're letting people in, when the FBI can't vet them, it puts American citizens at rest.
Does Ted Cruz rule out ever legalizing people that are in this country illegally now?
Senator Cruz?
I have never supported legalization.
Do you rule it out?
I have never supported legalization, and I do not intend to support legalization. And let me tell you how you do this. What you do is you enforce the law. What you do is you enforce the law.
I have never supported legalization, he said, Brit.
I was wondering how he would handle that because, look, both these men are very fine debaters and both held their own in the exchanges. But Cruz has one problem, and that is that back in 2013, when the Gang of Eight bill that Rubio had so much to do with was pending before Congress, Cruz was opposed to it because it had in it a provision for a path to citizenship. And he offered an amendment to strike the path to citizenship. And in contending for that amendment, he said that he was leaving in, he emphasized, Megyn, that he was leaving in place the legalization procedures. In other words, there were, for the people who were here, and as he put it, living in the shadows, illegal immigrants, he left in place a process by which they could become legalized, though not citizens. And he said,
we have it. We have it.
Good.
Let's listen to it. This is Ted Cruz, May of 2013, speaking about that Rubio Gang of Eight so-called amnesty bill. Watch.
I don't want immigration reform to fail. I want immigration reform to pass. And so I would urge people of good faith on both sides of the aisle, if the objective is to pass common sense immigration reform that secures the borders, that improves legal immigration, and that allows those who are here illegally to come in out of the shadows, then we should look for areas of bipartisan agreement and compromise to come together.
And it goes on from there.
Well, and what he did basically is he offered an amendment to strike the path to citizenship, but as you heard him emphasize there, and he said more about that as well, to leave the legalization process in place. Now, he says, he was never for legalization. And then he was, and moreover, his defenders are arguing, well, you see that amendment, well, you see, it was a poison pill. It was really designed to sink the bill. But you heard him say, I don't want it to fail, I want it to succeed. So he was quite simply not telling the truth about that tonight.
Well, this is how he fights back at Rubio. Whenever Rubio tries to hit Ted Cruz on NSA, because Ted Cruz was in favor of getting rid of the NSA surveillance program and was with Rand Paul on that, whenever Rubio hits Cruz on that, Cruz responds that Rubio supported so-called amnesty in that Gang of Eight bill. Now, they're not related, but that's how where his retort is.
Well, yeah, because I think Rubio has attacked Cruz on his vote back when I think Cruz was worried about the civil libertarian view,
which is a big deal. Which is a big deal now that we've had a terrorist attack on U.S. soil.
Well, it was a big deal back then in the eyes of some people who thought this NSA program of collecting these telephone call records, not calls, but records, was a terrible breach of people's civil liberties. Rand Paul was one of the most hardened advocates of that view, and I think Cruz was thinking that Rand Paul would be a competitor of his in the presidential race. Well, Rand Paul has turned out to be much less of a competitor than he imagined, and now that we've had a terrorist attack, that vote to close down that program, which Cruz cast, doesn't look as good as it did. And so, as you point out, Rubio has gotten on him about that, and he's responded by saying, well, you were Mr. Amnesty. Let's be fair about this in one respect. Certainly, Rubio was then favoring a much more liberal immigration bill than Cruz was. But for Cruz to say that he never supported legalization is palpably not true.
And Cruz also asserted tonight that the bill that replaced the NSA surveillance program strengthened the program, which is the truth is that under the old program, which he voted to eliminate successfully, the government could get 5 years of your phone records. They could go out to that California terrorist's home. They could get 5 years of that dead terrorist's records. And now, under the bill that Cruz supported, they can only get 18 months, potentially. There has been a limitation put in place. Now, you know, Cruz will talk your ear off about how in other ways it got strengthened, but that's a reality. Brit,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
last word.
I was just going to say, Cruz is an enormously impressive candidate in many ways. My question about him is that there seem to be times when he can't shake hands with the truth.
All right. Brit, it's always great hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you, Megyn.